Welcome to High Truths on Drugs and Addiction, where national experts bring you facts and answers. I'm your host, Dr. Ronit Lev, an emergency and addiction doctor who has served at the White House and still practices on the front lines. Right here on High Truths, you will learn from experts from around the globe and around all aspects of drugs and addiction. To grow this community of information and action, I hope you give us a 5-star review. Come visit me on hightruths.com to learn more about the show or download a free prescription for naloxone. Carrying naloxone for drugs is like carrying an EpiPen for allergies. Today's episode is sponsored by Families Against Fentanyl. FAF is an organization set on attacking the supply chain of deadly illicit fentanyl. To learn more, visit familiesagainstfentanyl.org and sign their petition to declare illicit fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. Hello again, High Truth listeners. Get ready for a U.S. Attorney conversation. I'm your host, Dr. Ronit Lev. The U.S. Attorney is one of 94 attorneys appointed by the President serving the various federal districts. Here are a few of the big U.S. Attorney cases from July 2024 related to drugs, according to the U.S. Department of Justice website. The Department of Justice was proud to arrest 2 leaders from the Sinaloa cartel in El Paso, Texas, Ismael Zambada Garcia, or El Mayo, and Joaquin Guzman Lopez. They were charged with multiple counts related to criminal fentanyl manufacturing and trafficking networks. A Chinese national was indicted for his part in the largest amount of fentanyl precursors in the country. And Rodrigo Paez Quintero, a Mexican national, was extradited from Mexico to U.S. to face charges on drug trafficking. A lot of big busts, high-level cases, but the various U.S. Attorney District offices do much more in their community. I had the honor to partner with our U.S. Attorney with our San Diego Substance Use and Overdose Prevention Task Force for over 10 years. There is much more than Mexican and Chinese drug busts, although that is important. To learn more about the U.S. Attorney, I reached out to Cindy Cipriani. Cindy Cipriani is Executive Assistant for the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of California, San Diego, and Imperial Counties. More importantly, she's been a friend and wonderful colleague in our local efforts on drugs. We both serve on the Executive Leadership Committee of San Diego's Substance Use and Overdose Prevention Task Force, and she co-chairs the Prevention and Education Committee. Cindy is an incredible community leader who developed programs to enhance crime prevention, community resiliency, prevent fatal overdose, prevent gang and gun crime, and combat hate. What more can she possibly do? She is amazing and very impressive. To learn more about Cindy Cipriani, check out the High Truth show notes. Cindy Cipriani, welcome to High Truths.
It's so great to be here with you, Ronit. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too, although it is better when we sit down and have a lunch date instead of a Zoom date. We go back a long way, so this is really special to have an episode with a good friend.
Yep, I almost wish we were doing one of our happy hours with margaritas.
Right, we'll have to schedule that. But Cindy, I remember the first time I met you. I don't remember, maybe you remember how many years ago it was. We were in a room with the Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force of San Diego, and you were like, okay, how can I help? What can our office do? Like really just taking that on. And I think I eyed you also because we do have a similar look and taste in clothing.
And size. I think if I ever needed a really cool dress to wear to a black tie event, I could probably hit up your closet.
Yeah, and vice versa. So yeah, that's fun. And then, again, you've been an incredible champion from that meeting of saying, how can I help, to running the organization.
You know what? It's been really exciting. I've had the privilege of helping to lead the U.S. Attorney's Office for more than a decade now. And it was especially rewarding back when I first met you during the Obama administration, when the Attorney General had directed all U.S. attorneys to get out in their communities and really engage. Don't just, you need to prosecute, you need to enforce, but don't just file indictments. You need to be out there as a problem solver. So that was a really exciting role to take on, integrating the U.S. Attorney's Office in the community and trying to be a convening voice.
Wow. I didn't know that history. that you were directed to do that because you were there like, okay, what can we do? Let's make this happen.
And somehow we managed to keep going through various administrations, budget shortfalls, staffing changes. We've managed to really keep it going.
So we're going to get into that. I want our audience to understand what is the U.S. Attorney's Office and such. And maybe this is a time to make a disclaimer.
So these are my personal recollections and opinions, and not necessarily those of the office, although I think everything I'm going to say is fairly consistent with the U.S. Attorney's view and DOJ policy. But this really is a product of my friendship with Ronit and my desire to kind of get out there the various projects that I've been working on.
That's awesome. And so, Cindy, your career path, you started as a journalism major in Ohio, law school in Georgetown, and then U.S. Attorney. Tell us about how that happened. Is this kind of what you saw yourself doing as a kid?
I think I had no idea when I was growing up. And in fact, when I went to Ohio State, I think I spent my first 2 years in a career planning course trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And one thing I understood was that I loved writing and was drawn to the energy of the newsroom. But following my getting my degree in journalism, it was very hard to find journalism jobs. And so I ended up taking a fellowship in the Ohio legislature. And since then, I've just had a burning interest in politics and public policy. And so following my legislature position, I worked on Capitol Hill for a member of Congress, decided to go to law school at night while working full time, and then ultimately ended up working in civil law at a very large law firm here in San Diego, but was always drawn back to public service and public policy. So after a decade of working in the firm, I ended up moving to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it's been my dream job ever since. I mean, I really feel you get to practice at the very top of your game in federal court, that I was surrounded by people who were just so excellent at what they did and so dedicated to public service and to the excitement of standing up in court and saying that you represent the United States. So it's been a privilege. It's been a wonderful road.
Wow. When you have passion about what you do, it just shows, and that it definitely shows in that, Cindy. And the thing is, you did that all with being a career mom as well.
This is true. As a matter of fact, I had little kids when I first started with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I'll never forget when I started out in the civil division, and I'll never forget when I tried my first case. I didn't see them for a couple of weeks. Their dad was on duty. And when I got home, they were out front with protest signs saying, "No more trials, no more trials." But fortunately, I had just as many trials to kind of keep me excited and engaged, but not so many that I was an absentee mom.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and we have that in common too, because we're able to tackle that, and it was not. I don't know if things have changed, but it was never not as easy in our times. And our kids came out okay.
You make it work.
Yeah. All right. So U.S. Attorney's Office, your dream job, what is that? What does the U.S. Attorney's Office do? And also tell us the difference. What's the difference between U.S. Attorney, District Attorney, Attorney General? What are all those? They're high-profile legal roles, but what are they, and what's the difference?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I think it's unusual to find people that do have an understanding of the differences. And in fact, my dad used to introduce me to everyone as a DA, and I basically just gave up explaining the difference. But basically, the district attorney is prosecuting state crimes. The U.S. attorney is prosecuting federal crimes. So crimes that cross international borders, crimes that cross state lines, crimes that involve violation of a federal statute. And so our jurisdiction is more limited than the district attorney. I will say here in San Diego, we are really fortunate to have fantastic relationships with our district attorney. And many times, some of our large takedowns involve prosecution of both state and federal crimes. And we're collaborating and basically deciding which defendant should be prosecuted where. The attorney general, there is a state attorney general, that would be Rob Bonta here in California. And there's also the U.S. attorney general. So my boss, the U.S. attorney, reports up to the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland. And basically, my boss, the U.S. Attorney, is the highest presidential nominee, really the only presidential nominee who's nominated by the president, confirmed by the Senate in her district. There are 93 U.S. attorneys around the country, and they are the chief federal law enforcement officer. So if ever there should be a dispute, and usually there isn't because we all collaborate and work wonderfully together, but when it comes to the case, we make the decisions about the case, and we make the decisions about which charges go forward, and basically whether it's FBI or DHS or Border Patrol, DEA, all the different agencies will respect the U.S. Attorney's decision and where to come down on charges. So they're very, very important members of the administration who basically carry the administration's justice policies forward into their districts.
Wow. So, okay, the ultimate legal justice entity in our country. And it's good to hear that you work together and collaborate. Give us an example. Let's say there's an fentanyl trafficking case, okay, and they're caught. How is the interaction now between U.S. attorney, federal versus district attorney, state and local?
So I think a really good example, there are a couple great examples. One just came up a couple months ago where there was a takedown involving 40 people in the Imperial Valley. And the Imperial Valley DA was present along with the U.S. attorney for the press conference on that case. It involved a major drug trafficking, money laundering operation. They were trafficking both fentanyl and methamphetamine. And basically, there were some state charges and some where you've got people really distributing significant amounts. Those are the people we're prosecuting federally. Money laundering charges are usually handled federally. And some of the lower level folks are handled by the district attorneys. So that would be a great example. The press release for that is on our website for anyone who's interested. And these are multi-year investigations. So we're not making decisions at the last minute. We have state agents out there and federal agents out there, and we are all collaborating together to put that indictment together and to pursue charges in our various forums.
So I've seen that, and one beautiful thing that I know you agree with is working in San Diego. We have such a collaborative environment, and again, we're friends with our U.S. attorney folks and our district attorney folks, and I see how they work together. Is that unusual for San Diego, or is that something that happens, in all the states?
I have to say, I've only practiced here, but when I speak with special agents in charge of various agencies at all of their retirement parties, these are folks who move around. People who are special agents of the FBI have moved around and been in many, many different offices. Same is true with DEA and Homeland Security investigations. And when they leave San Diego, they always comment on how extraordinary it is, the law enforcement relationships that we have here. And not just law enforcement, but relationships with the community, with stakeholders. It really is an extraordinary environment and really exceptional, and I think a role model for people. So when they do move on to other areas, I think that they work to emulate and replicate what we have here in San Diego.
Yeah. It really is special. It's not. I don't see I don't see that competitive nature. It's more like it's fun when you learn from other professionals, other industries on a common goal. That is just it takes you out of your usual thing. I see that as medicine. Like my favorite thing, to work with people in law enforcement, because that's not what I do, and they like it in reverse.
Right. And the goal is achieve public safety, not get the credit. Right. And, there's.
The goal is making San Diego better, whatever it is.
Right.
We all live here. Right. So that's the ultimate goal. It could always be our kids, our families, our friends. So it's I think that's the ultimate goal, and I think everybody feels that. This is our community.
I totally agree.
All right. So that's again, shout out to San Diego, but we do share our model, and that's another thing that we do. We openly share, and I think other people do, their successes and failures. Key issues for the U.S. attorney. What are the important? What are the orders now from the top to be working on?
Well, every U.S. attorney has discretion, but there are a number of areas where basically we all agree we're all prioritizing. So I think national security, obviously, is number one. We want to make sure that we are preventing domestic terrorism, the lone wolf, the shootings. We really want to be all over any kind of lead that indicates that there is a danger or a threat to public safety. We also are very focused on protecting our border. There is no such thing as an open border. Protecting our border from fentanyl, from illegal immigration, from human smuggling is one of our top priorities. And that also involves environmental threats. We have many cases where endangered species are being trafficked across the border. We're very focused on that, as well as hydrocarbon cases, cases that involve threats to the environment. So protecting our border is one of the reasons why we are one of the most productive offices in the nation, because obviously our district covers the entire California-Mexico border. And, it's one of the busiest border crossings in the world. And we really, really go to extraordinary lengths working with our partners. And our partners have wonderful mechanisms, technology, and people in place to make sure that we are protecting our border.
So, Cindy, you said there's no such thing as an open border, but we hear it differently on the news with like 2 million people crossing. I know that there's a focus on that living in San Diego, but have we laxed something must have changed if we're going to 2 million people like crossing into our nation.
I think that the misunderstanding comes from the political asylum statute, where people who are coming in as asylum applicants are doing so legally rather than illegally. So I'm not sure what number you're referring to, but basically when people are coming in illegally, particularly we're focused on people with criminal histories who are coming in illegally, or if they're smuggling people in, we actually have task forces, joint task forces with that are run by DOJ and other U.S. attorneys' offices that focus on human smuggling. And there is no such thing as an open border. All I can say is that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that's probably one of the areas where there is the most misinformation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had a conversation with former drug czar under Obama. Maybe you met him, Gail Kerlikowski. It seems like that we all kind of came into this issue at that time. But historically, the issue of drugs have just gone up logarithmically. Like when you and I were first met, there were 100 deaths a day, and we were like, this is crazy. And now there's 300 deaths a day from fentanyl, different drugs. And border, similarly, there was minimal, but each administration, each year, there's more and more of the problem.
I think what we've seen too is once the cartels did get into the fentanyl trade, that was a game changer. And so, we did start seeing more deaths. We're thankfully now starting to see a plateau, but it's still obviously far too many. But there have been just untold resources dedicated to the fentanyl problem at the border in terms of, just training dogs. And that happened several years ago, getting more agents, ensuring that we have the technology to find the drugs when they're in the car, and actually even just pedestrian crossings, really focused on that. We've seen the cartels recruit juveniles to smuggle fentanyl in their backpacks. These are kids who cross to go to school. They have family on both sides of the border, and it's in their backpacks. And so they're finding these folks. They are seizing record amounts of fentanyl. And that shows you that we don't have an open border, and we're prosecuting every case we can possibly make in court. We are prosecuting. So, it's very much a priority and something that we're all over. I can't say that we find every load, but we certainly are finding a lot of the fentanyl that they're trying to bring in. And we are definitely very focused on prosecuting those cases. And on the fentanyl end of it, we are prosecuting everything from the precursor chemicals to the money launderers to the folks who are selling the pills to we set up an entire group that looks at local dealers, the people who are driving the death rate in San Diego. It's called the Fentanyl Abatement and Suppression Team, and we're prosecuting the overdose deaths as well. So every aspect of the fentanyl problem is being addressed by Department of Justice.
and a lot more than prosecution. I think that's what people don't really understand. I was, really amazed and continue to be amazed how much prevention work is happening by our friends in the legal community, right? You think that this would be an education, Department of Education doing, but actually going into the community, working on crime prevention, on drug prevention, has been really, our legal community has been champions in that.
Yeah, this has been just a great opportunity for the people in our office who care so much about this issue. So, for example, we have opioid coordinators who are sitting with the families of those who lost loved ones. And they really felt the passion that it's not enough to just prosecute. We need to do something to stop this, to stop the tragedy. And they have pursued a number of really, I think, creative options. There is a campus outreach effort that is ongoing now, and I'm sure you've seen we have both a basketball video with the Aztec team.
Yes, I'll have to include that in the link to this episode, because that's a great video.
Please do so, because we don't have money for any of this. So this is all just driven by finding volunteers and creating these videos. That basketball video got over 1 million views, and then this year we just came out with the girls soccer team video, which was, I thought, even a step above the basketball one in terms of just the production of it. And we're finding folks who are willing to devote their time to editing and to producing a really quality video. And we're also taking all of those team members and turning them into peer messengers in their communities. And so it's just been a fantastic opportunity. But on top of those videos, we've also made real inroads into just campus culture. We've been able to meet with hundreds of dorm advisors about Narcan and how to recognize an overdose, as well as fraternity organizations and school health clinics. And we've really gotten onto the ground on college campuses for many of our local campuses, and I think made a difference there, because that's an area where we've reduced the death rate for those below 18 to now, I think, just 2 in the past year. The death rate in that 18 to say 35 age group has not decreased that much, and it's still very, very troubling. And I think that to the extent you can reach that college age population and turn them into peer messengers and arm every single one of them with Narcan and also warning messages and raise their awareness about the dangers of fentanyl, you can make a real difference in that death rate.
Right. I think that's so important. And I'm, again, so proud of that successful effort, too, for people that they're like, this is not, you were saying, like, you guys are not media producers or influencers, but this was such a passionate issue that you became that way. And that's incredible.
And the other thing is, Renee, that we really focused on from the education standpoint was we did create this fentanyl test kit, which is on the coalition's website. And that was an effort to take everything we knew about fentanyl that we thought was important to share and get it out into the communities. So we give the presentation, but anyone who wants to give a presentation on fentanyl has access to that, a PowerPoint with notes. And so we've given that presentation just dozens and dozens of times, probably close to 100 times by now, to everyone from Rotary groups to school classrooms, to parent groups at libraries, to clubs. I mean, I don't think we've ever said no to giving a presentation. And then those materials are all available for people to share.
That's amazing. And so you do a lot on the prevention side. And then, again, you guys aren't doctors, but you're working on the treatment side as well. And you were telling me about the program of providing MAT at federal prisons.
So that is now the standard. I recall when we had an opioid summit a couple of years ago, it was just starting to be used in prison. And there were a lot of concerns about getting medication-assisted treatment in prison. And, they're worried about people misusing it. They're worried about creating potentially, more addiction and creating an issue in terms of that availability and whether that could create more problems in the prison. But I think ultimately, folks realize that this is the way to prevent overdoses. One of the times when you are most vulnerable to an overdose is when you're released from prison. And if you can provide someone MAT while they are in custody and ensure that that is continued in that bridge when they leave custody, you can prevent a lot of overdoses and you can maximize the opportunity for that individual to mainstream and re-enter successfully into the community. And so it's a standard now. And in the beginning, we were seeing the ACLU file cases to make sure that their clients got medication assisted treatment. And we're really not seeing those cases anymore because it's become the standard.
Yeah, and again, that's a beautiful example of a project that has multiple facets to it, right? Like one of the barriers to giving MAT or Suboxone was the X waiver, and we worked really hard on eliminating that barrier, from the medical side, and then also bringing that availability into the prisons and jails now to people who have an opiate use disorder.
And I think also a big part of it has been removing the stigma to addiction in general and to use of MAT to counter addiction. Because I know at one point people felt we're just getting them addicted to something else. It's just another form of addiction. And, truly weren't seeing just the evidence and the indication that this is enabling people to overcome their addiction and to lead a really successful and promising life. And so I think we've just gone a long way in our society from breaking down the silos and having so many different aspects of the community and different groups collaborate to work together in multiple disciplines to help people understand that medication-assisted treatment works for a huge percentage of the addiction population.
Yeah, and Cindy, if we think about it, that cultural shift happened in a fairly short period of time. Of like you were talking about the stigma, like this is just replacing one addiction with the other, to making that readily available and normalized and encouraged. That, and relatively speaking, it happened in a short period of time.
And I think overall, just stigma reduction, it is occurring even in pockets where people were very resistant to hearing that message. Stigma reduction in general for people who suffer from substance use disorder. And we've seen the entire language change, right? From, druggie addict to people with substance use disorder. Just law enforcement, for example, understanding these are people with a medical condition. At some point, people were blaming poor choices. And now people are looking at the biology and understanding this is how addiction affects the brain, and it is a medical disorder.
Although I do think, I don't know if we have had this discussion with you yet, but the whole issue of stigma has gone a little bit awry. We don't want stigma for the human being who has a substance use disorder, just like you don't want stigma for someone who has diabetes because they need their insulin or whatever. Maybe that's not the greatest analogy, but you do want stigma on drug use. You don't want your children using drugs. And I think that's the confusion of reducing stigma is now in some places has gone to like, it's okay to use drugs. We used stigma to combat smoking, right? We said it's not cool to smoke. We stigmatized smoking. So I think there's a difference between stigmatizing the human being who may have a problem versus the drug itself, which we don't want people to use.
I totally agree. Primary prevention is absolutely critical. And all of our presentations, when we do good presentations in school and as part of the fentanyl toolkit, we cover vaping, we cover marijuana, we cover other drugs as well. Because we do see that, once you start down that path, there is a danger. There is a danger there, and there are public health risks. And we talk about the public health risks for vaping and for cannabis, as well as fentanyl, because there are real public health risks associated with vaping and with cannabis. And we want, teens to know about that.
Yeah. Public health or risks to them, and kids are you want to be like, I want to grow up and be a movie star or an astronaut or teacher or firefighter, whatever it is, you want your brain to grow the best it can, and drugs hinder that.
Exactly.
So you mentioned marijuana. When I was in DC, marijuana was the M word, and I don't know if it is for you. because it must present a difficulty since it's federally illegal, but yet it's readily available everywhere.
So we are still involved. I mean, obviously fentanyl and meth, and now we have cocaine. We have really increased cocaine seizures on the high seas, but we are still involved in marijuana prosecutions. So oftentimes, if there's a tunnel takedown, we'll find marijuana in the tunnels. We're seizing the marijuana that we see coming across the
And you're
border.
talking about the tunnels between Mexico and California, or
Yes,
our border.
underground tunnels. I mean, several underground tunnels have involved significant amounts of marijuana, and so we're seizing, right? And we are also helping to shut down illegal dispensaries and the folks who are feeding those illegal dispensaries. So we're not totally ignoring marijuana. It is still legal under federal law, and to the extent it is accepted under state law, there are regulations, there's a structure there. And when you have the illegal marijuana dispensaries who are giving out or selling to benefit their own, financial windfall, when they're selling marijuana that has not been at all regulated, oftentimes there are illegal chemicals that are used, pesticides that are used to create those grows.
We find those in the legal dispensaries as well.
I honestly, because we have not focused on the legal dispensaries, I don't know what the situation is there. It's my understanding that the regulatory structure does involve testing to ensure that there are standards, there's some growth standards, right? And so with the illegal dispensaries, you absolutely have no idea what it is that you're getting. And they're often associated with other aspects of crime. So you see gun crime, you see, other kinds of crime that are associated with those illegal dispensaries. And so we did have a successful operation where we shut down a number of folks who were involved in illegal dispensaries, and they pled not just to funding or facilitating the illegal dispensaries, but also to money laundering and gun crimes.
I think San Diego really got a shout out in an article in the LA Times by Connor Sheets, who was also a guest on High Truths, but he wrote an article saying, really giving a shout out to San Diego, and why can't LA County do the same thing with these illegal markets? So was that a U.S. attorney or a district attorney when you have illegal dispensaries in a location?
So we worked really closely with I think the district attorney does some of those cases as well on our own. I didn't really track that. We worked really closely with local law enforcement. I think it was the sheriff in that case, and I don't recall whether there were state as well as federal charges. But I think that both entities are keeping an eye on that, and really trying to do what we can to step into that space when appropriate at the federal level.
So if there's federal crimes and state crimes, does that mean there's two trials or two?
Ordinarily, what happens is that folks are charged in one or the other forum. So you're deciding which defendant should go to which forum. There are some occasions, for example, in the hate crime, in the synagogue case, that an individual is charged in both forums. Ordinarily, in drug cases, they will be charged in one or the other, and the leadership will make a decision in terms of where they need to be charged. And, we've had recent cases where we came together to decide in a case involving, a murder, a cartel murder, where that case would best be charged.
Interesting. And you mentioned the synagogue shooting because, that's close to my heart. I lost my best friend, Lori Kay. I think about her every day. But yeah, again, knowing that I had, people like you gave a lot of relief, that, something that we don't have to worry about. Like, we're able to grieve without worrying about the justice because we had full confidence that justice was going to happen.
Honestly, that it's so incredibly troubling what happened, and we're about to engage in United Against Hate Week, and we've been very involved in the Anti-Hate Coalition, which I co-chaired a couple of years ago, But basically, we really do want to bring attention to the rising tide of anti-Semitism. And we're looking at sharing a movie called Repairing the World, Bridges from the Stories from the Tree of Life, that is very much a healing how a community can respond to a hateful incident. And we're hoping to share that as part of our Hate Crime Coalition meeting during United Against Hate Week. I think we're all left with the scars of what happened in Poway. And I'm so sorry again, that you lost your friend. And it's just, there was some true heroism that day by several people.
Yep.
And great follow-up, I think, by law enforcement, but it can never really totally heal that incredible loss.
Yeah. Lori Kay, may she rest in peace and may her memory be a blessing. And again, how we came from marijuana to talking about my friend. How did that happen? But it did start with me asking about marijuana. You mentioned tunnels, and can't help to think about, we got terror tunnels going into Israel from Gaza. Are these the same type of tunnels, or are these smaller?
The tunnels really range. I mean, there are some that are very sophisticated, that have railway systems, that have lighting, electricity. And we don't find as many tunnels as we used to. And I don't know whether they're putting them in different places, not in our district, because we have pretty good tunnel intelligence and detection systems. But basically, they can range from underground sewers and pipes to very, very sophisticated tunnels that we attempt to, we obviously shut down.
Right. Well, I mean, there's some serious money to build that type of sophistication, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is amazing.
I mean, this is all about the money. It's all about the money. And so we see huge investments of money because, they're looking to make money on the other side if they can be successful at this. But, they will use any possible route. And that includes, like I said, using the juveniles in their backpacks, to loading up cars, to the tunnels, to, trafficking the drugs on the high seas. And we recently had a case that went to trial that involved, that we're seeing increasing cocaine, just trafficking on the high seas, and involved like a boat chase, a really, really dramatic boat interdictment of this huge load of cocaine. So we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing just every possible land, sea, air. We're seeing every possible route.
Wow. Well, again, follow the money. The other thing it's specific to California and maybe some other states is the use of public lands to grows, right? And we see Chinese, Mexican, other nationals using our public lands and putting all these pesticides in harming our endangered species, taking up water, which we don't have enough of California. Are you involved in that part of the illegal marijuana growth?
We have had illegal grows in the past on public land. It's been quite a while. And I think in our Eastern District of California, where they have a lot of public land, they're seeing more of that and focused on that. We do see the illegal pesticides coming over, and we're very suspicious that those are headed towards marijuana grows. And we are seizing, and in fact, I think our office has the record for environmental cases and seizing these illegal pesticides. And some of them, they're affecting the bee population. They're affecting the bees' abilities to hive, and they're so important to so many aspects of the food chain. And so we've been very concerned, and it's been an area, environmental crimes have been an area of very, very significant priority for this current U.S. attorney.
Wow. I may have to dive into that more, of how the pesticides are affecting the bees. You may have to tell me offline. I may have to do a show on that. That's very interesting.
I'll definitely send you the links too. We had a couple cases that resulted in press release successful prosecutions, and I'll send you the links to those.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So a lot, again, on all sorts of drugs, prevention, prosecution. Let's talk a little bit about how we got together with the Prescription Drug Abuse Task Force, now renamed as Substance Use Overdose Prevention Task Force, and your work and leadership on that.
So it was a real privilege because I actually, as you may know, Renee, I have addiction in my own family. And I know from a personal standpoint that it spares no one. There's no demographic that is protected from addiction. And my own particular story is that my ex became addicted to oxy during the era when doctors were putting out oxy, just at the drop of a hat. And basically, we're told that pain is like the sixth vital sign, and they were being lobbied more and more and more and more, keep prescribing, keep prescribing. And so you have somebody who was, the chair of the Stock and Bond Club, who coached Little League, successful stockbroker, who, became addicted and, seriously impacted his life. And so it was cathartic for me to get involved with this issue. And I think when we first started working together on this, it was oxy that was the main contributor to addiction. It's now changed to become fentanyl. And, there are so many different facets to this problem. And I recall the first summit that we did, there was so little data being exchanged between public health and law enforcement at the statewide level. We were better at that here in San Diego, but I recall that initial summit bringing people in from the Department of Public Health. Every single U.S. attorney attended that summit. And the U.S. attorney in one district, we showed a map of all of the different areas where overdoses were highest. And he was shocked to see that most of those fell in his district. And that started a huge,
I remember that map. The CDC had they have a great data point, and I went and created that map. And I'm not a public health professional at the time, and I'm the one who presented it to the public health officers of the state of California. They didn't do this themselves; they had to be nudged.
I wasn't even aware of your role in that, but I was just so relieved that finally that data was being shared, because if you were trying to target addiction and overdoses in your community and you don't even realize the extent to which your community is being impacted and which areas of your community are being impacted, the data is so critical to solving the problem from a treatment and a human standpoint, but also from a law enforcement standpoint. And so that was kind of a turning point. Yeah. In terms of just, waking up the whole state. We were, thanks to you, more on top of it.
Well, I kept saying, wait, we have mapping. That's when I used to say, this is pre-COVID. I'd say we have maps for gonorrhea and chlamydia. How come we don't have maps for this? And then someone says, oh, the CDC has that data. It's like, oh, how do you do that? And I created that map. We do have that data.
Right. And then after that, we saw the Department of Public Health release their opioids. They have a dashboard now. So you can go on by zip code, look at your county, and all of that information is so important on top of ODMAP, which now tells you in real time, where overdoses are happening. But, just getting involved in that issue, it just becomes so clear what the next step is that needs to happen. And you develop this huge passion and energy for just getting to that next step, whether it's the sharing of data, creating ODMAP, and ensuring that people are cross-trained in law enforcement about stigma and about Narcan and carrying Narcan. I mean, there have been different milestones all the way through, but I think in every single one of them, thanks to our coalition, we've been able to form the partnerships that we needed to reach those milestones. And I know when we first discovered fentanyl, when we first started noticing these loads come across the border and the deaths start edging up, we created a fentanyl working group. We brought everyone in law enforcement together, and Dr. T came in and told them all how to get Narcan. People started carrying Narcan. And now when I talk to line officers, they're saving people on a regular basis with the Narcan we're carrying. So, we're seeing, there's so much to do still, but we've seen just such a receptive community, all different sectors of the community being so receptive. So it was a privilege to be co-chairing the coalition for a number of years. And I am still sitting on the executive leadership committee and helping to chair the prevention committee. So it's been a privilege to be involved in that effort and to work with our partners.
Yeah, it has been. And you say now you're chairing the prevention. Can you give us a little bit about what prevention is working on? Because I feel like we've done a lot of good work and prevention over the years has kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. Although, like you're saying, U.S. Attorney is doing a lot, but in general, that effort, I think, is needs to be beefed up.
So we're still very focused on getting in schools. And I think one of the great things that's happening here in San Diego is through the Department of Education, there is a county contract with a former DEA agent. And I know you know Rocky. And
been on the show, yeah.
He's phenomenal. He's gotten into so many schools. And it's interesting, his name is Rocky because I've seen him present and he's like a rock star. These kids view him as a rock star. They want to go take selfies with him after his presentation. So I feel the school presentations have really been valuable, and that we've integrated well with our Department of Education to get into schools. Another great focus of prevention is juvenile smuggling, and we are constantly looking at which schools the juvenile smugglers, when we find them, which schools are they from, and getting into those principals.
Can you explain what juvenile smuggling is?
Okay, so this is kids who are basically recruited by the cartel to carry hard narcotics across the border. And, when they're juveniles, when they're under 18, they go through the district attorney and they're prosecuted there. But there's a finding that gets expunged, and it's very focused on rehabilitation, although they do serve some time. And we basically want these kids to know what the collateral consequences are of juvenile smuggling, that their whole family is going to lose their century, their ability to cross easily into the United States, that that it's going to be a record. The arrest is going to be a record that remains, even if the actual finding by the juvenile court is expunged, that they are going to basically have years where they're going to give up the right to be on social media. They will not be able to drive for several years. They will lose their Fourth Amendment right and have to consent to searches. And so basically it's going to affect their life. And when we meet with kids who formerly did carry drugs across the border, they regret it. And they say, I want to help stop this. And so we find individuals to work with us in that program to be the peer messengers that can talk to their to students, to their peers, to let them know how this affected them. The really tragic aspect of this is you can still be in high school, but if you had your 18th birthday, you are going to be prosecuted in federal court. And if you are crossing hard narcotics into this country, you are looking at a lot of time and a felony on your record. And so, I see some of those cases and I sit in on those debriefs. And those are tragic stories. Those are tragic, tragic situations where people who, their brains aren't fully formed yet. They may be 18, but, and many of them have very, very difficult economic circumstances that make the money look attractive to them. And they're not seeing the consequences on the other side of it. And so, I've sat through several debriefings with 18-year-olds in tears over how this has impacted their family and their future.
Do they have intact families? Does education need to go to the parents as well? Like, don't do this. It's okay if we don't have money. Like, I don't want you to do this.
Yeah. So basically, many of them do come from intact families. And, in the debrief I just sat in on, the young man was saying, because I get into detail about what was it like to be in jail? Did your family lose century? Going through what the collateral consequences were for him. And he said, my family left me in jail for 77 days because they wanted to teach me a lesson. Like, they could have bailed him out and they didn't, because they wanted him to learn a lesson. And so, his several of the families we work with, not just the student, but their family, if they can enter into our program to help us with prevention. And the families will urge them, like, you need to pay attention to this. You need to stop this. You need help on the other end, help law enforcement stop this. And they actually come to our juvenile smuggling prevention programs with us. They accompany us. At least one person will accompany us to each presentation to be able to personally talk to the kids.
Yeah. And so, Cindy, juvenile smuggling is one project I know that's very passionate to you, as well as many others through your very robust career. Do you have a favorite project that you worked on?
So now we're working in an area that I've been wanting to turn to for a long time, which is working with our faith-based community. starting with a rabbi who has a wonderful group of youth that he interacts with frequently. And so we're now wanting to spread that and work with with the Black church pastors as well, and really get into the community in certain communities that our demographics are showing are more likely to be affected by addiction and by fentanyl trafficking. And that's particularly true. We're seeing in our Black communities and neighborhoods a higher level of fentanyl deaths. That's also true on our tribal reservations, and also true in our Hispanic neighborhoods. So we're trying to attack that from the standpoint of working with their faith leaders. And so that's been an exciting project as well. And, on the other side, I also work a lot on gun violence and gang prevention with youth. And we are getting into schools with a program called Project Lead that basically works with fifth graders and teaches them refusal skills. And we do it with law enforcement. So on top of teaching refusal skills in a very interactive way where we're acting out plays and they're really involved, it's not just them being lectured, we're bringing in local law enforcement. And those local law enforcement officers are becoming mentors to those kids. And it's been a really wonderful thing to see how that affects the kids.
These are all
Some
like
of those
amazing
kids,
prevention projects, and the same skills. First of all, I think you've got the right age group. But this is not for high schoolers, right? You want to do it ahead of time, go upstream in fifth grade, and how to say no to, you're saying guns, but it applies to drugs and everything else that's negative.
right. It's a 6-week program. So we talk about gangs and guns, starting out with just people who are asking you to tag and get involved in graffiti, and then use that to kind of enter into gangs and drugs and other gun crime. But we also, we do have one just specifically on drugs and alcohol. We have one, it's called the payoff, where basically you look at what you would make if you didn't pursue a degree or any education beyond high school, and how you would live and how you would pay your bills. And we give you a budget, and the kids have to figure it out, versus if you did pursue higher education or a trade school and had, a better financial foundation, what your life would look like. And you just see these kids, you just see the idea dawn on them on how important it is, And so it's a great program, and we've had such a wonderful response from teachers and from the kids. Just an amazing response, and an incredible response from San Diego Police Department. And they now have, I think, 10 different officers who are helping us teach this. Every year they give us more officers because they're seeing the huge impact. The kids are seeing officers not come in to arrest someone they know in their community, but coming in to bond with them and teach them and mentor them. And so it's just made a huge difference in terms of increasing trust between law enforcement and the community.
Who I don't think anybody has any idea how much U.S. Attorney, law enforcement is working on prevention. That's incredible. I mean, first of all, that's not your expertise. Do you partner with Department of Education to put on these programs and fund them? And how does that all happen?
So we have no funding, as you know. So basically what we do is we recruit our prosecutors, and we have prosecutors who, one of the reasons they love our office is that they aren't just prosecuting, they're down in the neighborhoods. Some of them grew up in, they're down in the neighborhoods that are challenged. And we pick schools purposely that are very challenged. And as a matter of fact, at one point we had looked at schools that were around what was called the Four Corners of Death, where there was a lot of shooting in Southeast San Diego. And then we worked directly with the principals of the schools. And basically, they've been very, very receptive to it. I don't think we've ever seen a school say no. And in fact, we're oversubscribed. So right now we're in 14 classrooms. And we ask all of our federal law enforcement entities to provide partners as well, and instructors. So you might have an instructor from the city attorney's office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, from FBI, or from even Food and Drug Administration or IRS or Secret Service, the marshals. They've all been involved in this program, on top of people from the court. And so it gives our prosecutors and law enforcement officers this view, in this window into the world that the fifth graders live in, and also gives them access to, we spend the whole first time talking about our careers and how we got to where we are. And so they're seeing just possibilities, career possibilities as well.
Wow. That's amazing. I kind of like jealous. Like I wish medicine had that. We could go in there and talk about public health and do that. Maybe that's an idea. We could do that jointly someday. The medical and or another public health, public safety cooperative that as we have.
I could see you launching that, Renee. And but this program is, we didn't actually create the program. We did streamline it and condense it down because schools weren't able to do like an 8 or 12-week program. So we condensed it down to 6 weeks. But they provided all the materials. We streamlined the materials. We have it so that, the instructors just get a booklet and they can get up and go and run with it, so that it's not a huge heavy lift time-wise, but it's a hugely rewarding experience.
Who made the curriculum?
So it's called Project Lead, and I think it was originally developed with the American Constitution Society and the DA's office in Los Angeles. And so you have to actually get permission to be able to use it, in your district. And, our program, I think, has been one of the most far-ranging in terms of just the number of students that we've reached with it.
That's amazing. And then we also talked, I had a episode with our district attorney, Summer Stephan, that and she's putting out an evidence-based program that's certified that schools can voluntarily take and teach those life skills, resiliency skills, kind of what you said, how to say no. Although I know that's not the PC way to say it now, but resiliency skills in schools. So that's very exciting. It reminds me of another episode we had. I don't know if your office worked with them, and our producer Dave Rivas was part of that. We did a show with Melissa Baldwin and her interactive program on human smuggling, also in a theatrical way in teaching those resistance.
Oh, no, I haven't seen that. And you know what? I'm going to have to watch it. We might need to integrate that.
Yeah, because I really like that and wanted to reach out to her because what she does so nicely with human smuggling would apply to drugs or really anything else. I really like that. So that's some of your best projects. All, it seems like upstream prevention type products. I knew you've done so many other things with combating hate. You received a nice award from my Anti-Defamation League for your work on hate, and I didn't even know that it was Anti-Hate Week coming up. And what are you working on today?
So we're getting ready for United Against Hate Week, and that is actually, it's a newer celebration for San Diego. They've done this in the Bay Area for a number of years, and in 2 years ago, I brought it to San Diego. Our office helped bring it to San Diego, and it really caught fire. And so it'll be happening this year. I think it's going to be nationwide now, not next, but the following week. So the week of, I think it starts on September 18th is when it begins, and it'll take place for a whole week. There will be events every single day. Some are virtual, some are in person, and there will be everything from training on how to be inclusive, how to respond if you see hate, how to be an ally instead of just a silent bystander if you see an incident, to shows for training programs for law enforcement, training programs for the community on hate and extremism and what that looks like, and how to respond to it. So I think ADL is putting on 2 or 3 different programs. So I'll make sure to get you that in case you want to add it as a link to the show. That would be great. We're really trying to get broad participation. And then part of this is just a social media storm for people to really share that they stand against hate in our community. And I think that helps just raise the morale and community spirits so that people know, like, we're behind you and we want to make a difference on this issue. And the other thing is that I'm working on now is every U.S. Attorney's Office has been given a small pot of money. Ours is smaller than most. And the reason is it's based on your violent crime rate. And so, and I was talking before about we don't have an open border. If you look at Tijuana, one of the most dangerous places in the world, I think they have the highest or second highest murder rate in the world. And compare that to San Diego, where we have one of the lowest violent crime rates of any major city. I mean, that just tells you that we are protecting our border. We are protecting our San Diego community and making it safe. And so to aid those efforts and to ensure that we are keeping gun violence and violence under control, each area is given an amount of money that's based on their violent crime rate. And ours is a little bit under $200,000 a year. And we have a group of people. I chair a Project Safe Neighborhood Task Force. And we have a group of people that makes recommendations, and then 3 former law enforcement individuals, a prosecutor, David Bejarano, who was San Diego police chief, and Shelley Zimmerman, who was also police chief, who decide where the money goes. And we are funding mentoring and reentry programs. So mentoring programs for youth, like Project, it's Reality Changers. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They work with first generation college students, many of whom come from, other countries. They help them on everything from taking the SAT to applying for college. They take kids with lousy grade point averages and turn them into Harvard students. I mean, they're absolutely amazing. That's one of the groups we funded. We fund also Rise Up Industries. They train people who are coming out of prison who are associated with gangs to become machine tool operators, making very, very good money. And so it discourages any kind of recidivism. They have a fantastic record on recidivism. So being part of that and being able to help direct those funds and to ensure the community knows about these funds and is applying for these funds, we probably funded over $1 million of projects in the last couple of years. So we're getting ready for our next round of funding.
That's amazing. Amazing. All good work. You know what? I want to add to your hate thing. We think about eliminating hate, and we think about, anti-Semitism or any type of cultural or ethnicity. I think our country right now needs anti-hate, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Trump or Harris supporter, and you should all be Americans. I'd love to add that.
I love that idea. I attended a book discussion at Jewish Family Services for the author of a book called The Opposite of Hate. And that's exactly what she was talking about. Like, we need to be able to talk to one another. We need to be able to have conversations and keep relationships going and understand that people have, different perspectives. That's not a DOJ goal, but certainly protecting democracy and protecting our ability and our, freedom to have those conversations.
Yeah. I just think it's like bringing pride in America, kind of like we have in San Diego. We have pride in San Diego. And that pride, infiltrates everything that we do. It helps with the collaboration and the projects and that and that's where it stems from. And I just think that if we had that, bring back that pride in America, that hopefully would unite us in that way too.
That is a great idea, Renee. If you want to put an event together on that, I would be happy to help promote it.
All right. Cindy, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of everything that you've done to help the community, to help the United States, to represent the United States. And I've learned so much from you over the years, and you could borrow any dress of mine anytime.
Thank you, Renee. It's been such a pleasure just appearing on the show, and I'm also just so grateful for your friendship and your partnership over the years.
Thank you for listening to High Truths on Drugs and Addiction, where you learn from experts from around the globe and around all aspects of drugs and addiction. This week's episode would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsor. A sincere and warm thank you to FAF, Families Against Fentanyl. Visit familiesagainstfentanyl.org to learn more. High Truths producer is Dave Rivas from Davey Boy Productions. I am your host, Dr. Ronit Lev. We hope we brought your day a little bit more High Truths.